Om Tare Du Tare Du Re Soha. Om Tare Du Tare Du Re Soha. Om Tare Du Tare Du Re Soha. Om Tare Du Tare.
All right. I think I said it already, but good to be with all of you. So last few weeks, we've been unpacking attachment, how it creates suffering in our lives, methods to counteract that attachment. And today we're going to get into, well, how's all that attachment happen? And you're going to find, I think, as we go through this, how wonderful it is that these things, 2,600 years ago, explained, very commonsensical. And, here we are today with our evidence-based research, discovering these things, as well. But it's nice that that we have a framework that we can work with that makes sense to us in the world we're living in today. And so let's go ahead and get right to the text. 6 factors that cause delusions to arise. Right? Move my little pop-up here out. No one chooses to experience anger, greed, and other delusions, and they clearly cause problems in our life. So, why do we have them? Tibetan lamas say that following delusions is as easy as rolling a boulder down a hill, whereas having a positive attitudes is as hard as pushing the boulder up a hill. That's inspiring. Okay, let's just go home. So this is mainly due to habitual tendencies built up over lifetimes. But we can transform our mind by learning to counteract delusions and becoming familiar with positive qualities. Deluded thoughts will gradually become weaker, and constructive ones will increase with frequency and strength. They're just describing neuroplasticity. What we think, say, and do a lot will become more habitual, and what we stop doing will start to fade. And so if we're not aware of the dynamic and how they arise, though, it's so easy to just do things that feel good, right? It's pretty easy. That's the boulder downhill. Do things that feel good, not realizing that I'm creating the cause of my attachments and my aversions and misperceptions and my anxiety and my fears and my desires and all that based on something that's not true. And so everything in Buddhism is always moving us towards reality. And the fundamental hypothesis is the more you live in reality, less suffering you have. So that's where we get to keep moving towards. So how can we engage in patterns that actually promote well-being? Like all other impermanent phenomena, delusions come into existence due to causes and conditions, right? They don't come out of nowhere. Buddhist scriptures explain 6 factors that are the main causes and conditions for delusions arising in our mind. By skillfully working with these factors, we can diminish the strength and frequency of disturbing mental states and enjoy greater peace of mind. Okay, good thing we didn't go home. Some good stuff here. So, first factor, seeds. The first factor that causes delusions to arise are the seeds or propensities of delusions that were in our mind in previous lifetimes and travel with the mind from life to life. So we have these from birth. For instance, even when we do not feel angry, its seed abides in an unconscious level of our mind when we encounter an object that triggers it, the seed ripens into manifest anger. So, we get right into reincarnation or rebirth, actually, and continuum of consciousness. So it might be people thinking, well, I don't know about all that woo stuff. And then go, well, let's just look at epigenetics and how we evolve and how just genetically there's propensities within cultures, and they even have trauma that's been passed down generationally and different cultures, and you can start to see how people coming in this world, even just biologically, are coming in with certain traits and potentials that others don't have, traumas of generational traumas and so forth that had happened. And you look at how life evolves and the evolution of animals and different species, we actually start to change, adapting to, right, things. So if you do, if it makes sense to you that there is this continuum of consciousness, what's stated here is there's a continuum of consciousness. This is our baseline substrate consciousness. And it gives rise to everything. All of our seeds are in there, all the imprints of all these lifetimes. And based on those potentials, I start seeing myself in a particular way. I start seeing you in a particular way. And it ripens to how I see and experience myself and others. But even on just a one lifetime level, you're going to see how people enter the world with predispositions, right? Already have propensities and potentials. There's proteges that come into the world, right? They're musical and, speak languages fluently, things like that can happen. And so they're already coming in. So from my perspective, I have no problem. I mean, it only makes sense in my mind that, people, twins, genetics, same family, very different attributes, different qualities, different interests. Why is this one like that? Why is that one like this? And also, does the mind just come from nowhere? It's kind of an interesting thought. Something's born, mind just appears. Not sure how that works, but as we always indicate, and very important, is don't set things aside. We can set things aside that don't make sense. Don't adopt them just because. Well, in Buddhism, it says there's multiple lives. So, yeah. Dalai Lama said so. He's a good guy. Trust him. It's got to make sense to us. It's got to ripen in a way. And at the same time, don't close the door, because in truth, if we don't know, we don't know. So why do you close the door on something you don't know? You just close the door and you'll never know. So approaching teachings of any sort, the balance is discernment, analytical, just precision, and an openness, right? An openness to potentials is there, something that I can learn. And so when we don't know something, to say you know something when you don't know, like, that just doesn't make sense. If you don't know, you don't know. So why spend a whole bunch of time arguing about something you don't know, saying you know? All right. And so you hold it, openness, no conclusion. Or, yeah, it makes sense. I totally get it. This, or, whatever works for you. But we don't adopt beliefs simply out of blind faith. That's just not effective. Just not effective. All right. So I'm pausing there because I think Kurt has something to say. What's up, Kurt?
How do you do that? How do you know which one is asking questions? I have so it said something there like the seed of anger. So I guess I've always thought that the seeds were individual seeds, like all of the different times that I got angry planted a different seed, and then causes and conditions arise that, and it, I don't know, somehow picks. But it sounded from that there's like this giant seed of anger in my mind stream, and causes and conditions arise, and then the anger flares from that one seed. So you don't have to get rid of 400 million seeds of anger. You get rid of one anger seed, and then, not that I'm in danger of that, but you get rid of it, one anger seed, and then you're done with it. Is that closer to how they're thinking about it? These
No, no,
delusions,
no, it's multiple. So yeah, right the first time.
right? The
But
first time, okay,
yeah, yeah. What she was sharing that was just taking, for example, you have the seed of anger from a previous one. It'll show up today. It's late and you don't even know about it. And when the right conditions appear. As a matter of fact, we'll get into the other factors that kind of nurture that seed and
sure,
impact. Yeah.
okay,
So
thanks.
yeah. So there's that's the thing that I think is really important to understand is when we talk about karma and how karma ripens and positive potentials merit, these sort of negative propensities. It's not linear, it's not linear. We have all these potentials, but if the conditions aren't there for them to arise, they don't happen. So there's a lot that's latent that will arise at certain times if the conditions are there. And so positive potentials often merit is kind of called positive potentials. It's just an endless amount of these potentials that I might have some unwholesome potentials ready to pop up, but I'm not in an environment that triggers them. I'm all like, Mr. Zen guy. And then, and then, then you're in that environment and all of a sudden, man, I am so far from Zen, and, that's ripening. So yeah, let's we'll just pack. But so the Buddhist teaching would be that this has come with us, and it's lifetime after lifetime. If we're not quite there in that mind stream, we can start to see how in this lifetime we keep having these seeds or potentials based on how we engage in the world, where the DNA that was in contact with us, the cultures that we came from, all of that's going to impact you before you're even born, right? And that's all available now as people are pointing that out. I actually saw it was an interesting thing. It was a big conference, bunch of neuroscientists, and they were saying from women, as like a trauma will skip a generation, like the grandmother will have it, the mother, doesn't, the granddaughter does. The grandmother's trauma, which I thought was quite fascinating. So we also have to remember that we're all interdependent, right? So I have my karmic imprints, but there's nothing me about me, right? Everything about me is infused with my parents, their grandparents, the cultures are raised in, all those environments, all those things that ever happened, collectively, as well as what I've ever done collectively, all giving rise to what I think of as John. And, sometimes you guys might forget that. All right. The same is true for attachment. Arrogance and other delusions, these seeds are eliminated only by directly realizing emptiness. Until then, we can avoid getting caught up in and acting out delusions by applying antidotes to them when they arise. It's also helpful to do regular purification practices, as these can reduce the strength of our delusions. And so purification practice is a big deal to purify any negative karmic imprints or seeds. And we can start reducing these seeds. But what they're talking about is complete, absolute removal of all karmic imprints. That's going to be direct realization of emptiness, which is another way of saying seeing yourself as you are, actually knowing deeply your ultimate primordial nature. Oh, do we have a hand up again?
Sorry, to me again. So I thought that I'd heard that when that anger, that seed of anger is triggered, right? Causes and conditions exist. That seed of anger is triggered. Then that particular seed is gone, or can it be triggered again and again and again?
Yeah, so we're kind of getting a little
I know, I
techy.
know.
No, it's okay to get techy. Uh, so karmic imprint, so karma has ripened, so that karma is gone. But these very subtle seeds
Oh,
are
oh,
still resident. But
oh, it's
that,
that subtle. Okay, that makes a lot of sense. Thanks.
okay. Well, I said something that makes sense. I'm on a roll. We should probably stop right now. Okay. Let's pop back in here. So, okay, it's all going to come together here. So we got C's, now we got objects. The second factor is the object. There is always an object we get attached to or angry at. It could be a person, a sound, a car, pizza. I was kind of thinking about that earlier, and so on. Think of a delusion you often have trouble with and investigate which object triggers it to arise in your mind. It's helpful to avoid those objects if possible, in the same way a recovering alcoholic should avoid going to bars. Are you telling me I don't go to the pizzeria anymore? This is sounding brutal. When that isn't possible, you can maintain mindfulness and introspective awareness when the triggering objects are nearby so that you can notice and deal skillfully with whatever delusion arises. So, this is getting very simplified in a sense that you don't want to just avoid everything that you might get attached to or have a delusion around, right? They're talking about extreme. Okay. So if I'm deeply attached to something, it triggers unhealthy behaviors. And, so alcoholism is one, drugs one, romance. Actually, the lady who wrote Dopamine Nation, talking about addiction, how dopamine triggers that. Her thing is romance novels. That was her addiction, man. Like in between, she's a psychiatrist, like, treats clients, and in between, man, she's cranking on the romance novels, man. That was her dopamine. And so, in other words, we can get addicted to anything. That's the scary thing. Yeah, just this chemical release and the dopamine and so forth that can trigger that. And so, if we can avoid those things that are highly triggering, it's going to be really healthy. As a matter of fact, her research showed that to detox off of any of those things, pornography, romance novels, chocolate, drugs, whatever those things are that really trigger those addictions and attachments, it's roughly 30 days of complete abstinence to just reset the system. So, right now we get activated all the time, cell phones and social media news blasts, they're hitting us all the time. And so taking time away from that's going to help have us be more balanced. And then, as pointed out with this, with mindfulness and sort of, introspective awareness and mindfulness are close but not the same thing. Mindfulness is I'm aware of my object, like I'm mindful, I know what I'm doing, I know where my mind is, and introspective awareness is the sort of a meta awareness, knowing whether or not you're being mindful or not. And it's kind of checking and monitoring the situation. And so it's becoming aware of those shifts, which when we do shamatha, you're basically trying to be mindful on the breath. And but you have this introspection that's kind of noticing when you're not and going, hey, what kind of pizza were you talking about? I'm sorry, I'm just there for a moment. Okay. So, and so we have that those two work together, and then, then we can bring it back. And so as we develop this skill, we're going to be much more able to regulate those triggers. So sometimes the object we can just think of as triggers, right? People say, I'm very triggered, so and the object, the object's not necessarily a person or event. It's that which is triggering. So we've got seeds, we've got a trigger, an object. Let's see if we can put this all together. Company. I got some friends coming in from Syracuse tonight. They should be there about 20 minutes. I'm going to have company. What were we talking about? Company. The third factor, company, refers to friends or people we associate with. We are easily influenced by others. So if we spend time with people who have excessive attachment or anger, for example, those delusions will increase in our own mind. If you find this to be true in your experience, resolve to spend less time with such people, to be careful with your mind when you are with them, and to spend more time with people who influence you in positive ways. And now we're just getting down to fundamentally healthy choices. And so often we don't really give a lot of thought process about who we associate with, what we do, believe it or not. I mean, we go to work, we're around a lot of people, we do things with people. And sometimes we don't even think about, is this healthy? Is this the group that's healthy? Is this these people, healthy in my life? Do they support how I want to live? Because our environment's going to impact us on incredible levels. And so people often will hear like Buddhist teachings and they'll just think, well, I should be able to be around anybody, because, I know how this works. But actually, no, you need to be around safe, nurturing, healthy people as much as possible in a safe an environment. Get your basic needs met. And, when I first became a school teacher, my the methods teacher, who was at LA Unified, pretty renowned guy. One of his things was don't hang out in the teacher's lounge. Just don't go there. Everybody's going to be complaining. And it's kind of like that. We can be around people who complain a lot. We don't even notice the impact. That's just how we live. So yeah, we actually got a group that would meet once a week and have lunch together and didn't talk shop. Yeah, teachers hang out, have lunch together, don't talk about school. Things like that. Put ourselves in nurturing, healthy environments, because that's going to have a huge impact on how we perceive the world and influences this whole subtle consciousness. Information. The factor information can include lectures and so forth. Information, I have to pause, there's a little pop-up on there we go. Information from these sources can trigger our attachment, anger, and other delusions and cause them to increase. Anybody have any experience with that? I mean, that's the whole driving force right now. It's the attention commodity, driving podcasts, driving, all these niche outlets, YouTube influencers, just hitting people and then, shaping thoughts. Bring to mind some examples of this in your experience. Resolve to be careful about the kind of information you expose yourself to. And this, of course, is just critical in the time that we're living in. You can just get a ton of the exact dialed type of information you want to listen to with your point of view about the things that you think are right. And it just nurtures and grows a worldview. And it's really hard to get information about other people's thoughts that don't agree with you, and that of clarity. And, we used to have more balance in that way, but it's really because the silos of information, the algorithms of what you search for and what you're interested in, and it gets tailor-made. And then, people listen all day to people, and it's just shapes a worldview. And then we tend to reinforce that. Like if you think it's just habit, human stuff. I learned this early psychology. If you have a belief system, this group of people are bad drivers. Okay. Every time you see somebody like that in an accident, it reinforces, right? Oh yeah, they're bad drivers, of course. And what our mind doesn't do is every time we see an accident that wasn't that kind of person, whether it's, a culture or male, female, whatever, we don't sit there and go, that's odd. There's an accident and it didn't include, the type of person I think are bad drivers. Mine doesn't compute, but every time it reinforces. So we're constantly seeking reinforcement of the belief system that we have. And that's before all this attention deficit. The mind will do those things and catch and reinforce belief systems. And then we tend to talk about those things, and those people we tend to talk about. And what happens is we have a whole worldview based on belief systems that we think are valid based on experience, except we never opened our mind to the alternate experience of all the times there were accidents without, that kind of person in car. And so that is really important. And then information, what am I feeding my mind? It's amazing what people will do to get organic food and not, every now and then Laura's not here tonight. So if they're out of an organic avocado or something, I'll get something that's not organic. Okay, I'm going to bring it home. She didn't know. I tried to get the organic one first. Okay, that's where we're going. So that's a confession. She'll never know. So it's between us, right? And so, we'll go through these great lengths to monitor what we're putting in our body or exercise or all that. And we're not even monitoring the biggest impact on our mental, emotional health, and that's what we're putting in our mind. What are we watching? What are we listening to? What kind of conversations are going on? There's a huge difference between watching a Quentin Tarantino movie and a Jetsuma Tenzin Palmo tie. Okay, one of them's health food and the other's not. Now I'll let you figure that out. Okay. But imagine, people have gotten so desensitized to killing and to violence and to things, and that stuff we're just putting in our mind all the time. And then we listen to news and we're putting, there's very rare news that's talking about like really good, wonderful things that are happening. And so now our minds, hearing some pretty horrific stuff a lot. And then we get this worldview and it's skewed. And what if, what are the thoughts I'm nurturing in my life? Are they wholesome, health food? Are they attachment, greed, anger, frustration? And so the information that we're taking in all the time, it's going to have a huge impact. I notice, even in the mornings back in, when I'd sit there in the morning, if you listen to a news thing or you listen to like a Jetsuma Tenzin Palmo 10-minute thing early in the morning, when you're done, you got a different mind, right? One's busy and caught up in the other one's, I hadn't thought about it. So what's the inputs? My mind's going to have a lot to do with my inputs, right? So it just doesn't create stuff. It's like, what are the inputs? What am I paying attention to? Am I paying attention to everything that's wrong? Am I paying attention to that person who helped somebody with groceries today? What am I paying attention to? What's the information I'm putting in my mind? And if we monitor that at even a fraction of how we monitor other things that we put in our lives, wow, that alone, huge difference. Input. What are the inputs here? And if I'm not, inputting anything like, wholesome, kind, nurturing environments, talks, interests, and where's it going to come from? Where's it going to come from? So I think that's one of the real important things that, just our worldview shaped. I'm often on a quest to find a TV series with a wholesome message. It's harder and harder to find. I mean, the heroes, Breaking Bad, Sopranos, like all these crime bosses, like, yeah, there's not the thoughtful, moral kind of guiding principle. Where's Andy Griffith? Uh, uh, there's a show Blue Bloods, right, that was on for a long time. A New York police family, and they dealt with issues, and there was around integrity and things. There are some, but they're hard to find. They're rare. And just think about a culture that's feeding itself on rooting for, criminals. It's weird. Dexter, right? I mean, the lovable sociopathic killer, right? And you're kind of rooting for him. You sort of think, wow, there's just, what am I feeding my mind? All right. You should get a shirt and just, yeah, that's one. Okay, so that's Keith.
Yeah, I really appreciate this point about what we're consuming with our minds. It's something I've seen for quite a while in my life, and just a lot more subtle examples too. Like if you watch commercial TV and listen to commercials for an hour or two or a few day in and day out, those are just little, machines that are generating this need for attachment to material things to buy, right? That have such an influence on us. Or music. Um, you know, you're looking for a wholesome TV show. What about a love song that isn't about attached love? And we were just singing here, I can't live if living is without you, but we won't sing it right now. Um, anyway, so I think, those obvious ones with the violence, the sex, but there's so many ones that are, I think, a lot more subtle and ubiquitous throughout our environment to be aware of too.
Yeah, the messaging, that subtle messaging, you're successful if this, right? And if you have that, or this will make you happy. And there's always the quintessential image of that person on a beach in a beach chair. Nice ocean thing, like you've arrived. Yeah. And that person can be pissed off in 10 minutes. Yeah. A lot of people get in that chair and then they don't know what to do. They're on their cell phone, or something. It's like, wow. But I'm striving for this cool little chair on a beach. Yeah, so this subtle messaging. Alyssa.
Yeah, thanks. Yeah, and then there's needing that balance, right? Because it would be in some ways really easy to just decide not to search out the news because it's so painful. I can notice how quickly listening to the news triggers um, sadness and uh, a certain amount of hopelessness, but yet I don't want to be in the dark about what's happening. And I want to find organizations that I can be part of and ways that I can contribute to hopefully, making some changes happen. So it's also a balance of staying informed with important information, but also not getting so sucked in to where it pulls me down. And I know how it is so easily pulling lots of other people down too, to where it's hard to notice everything else that's so beautiful and and lovely to be part of.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Yeah, we absolutely need to have balance. And, I'm not telling anybody to not watch The Sopranos or anything. People make their choices. And the news, for example, there's healthy ways to listen to news and ways that are less healthy, right? And, for a while, I was just more scanning headlines, because there's a lot of repetition. And then what's important that I need to know about. And then I might read more. Instead of just pundits, that's not news anymore, and then that's a lot of information, but you could have some really good discussions, right? That come up. I actually just listened to a news podcast on really the sort of crisis around donors, donating body parts and a lot of that whole industry and some of the ethics and things that have really crashing that right now, which I don't want to bum you all out. But it's important information, as Alyssa makes a point, right? It's important information, especially if you're going to donate a body part. And we want to be informed. We know the real world. And but how do we do that in a healthy way? So one of the things that really wonderful psychiatrist here in the Valley, advises, and he himself he says, after 8 o'clock, there's no news, there's no screen time, you know. Right. He's doing hygiene, for good sleep. He's telling his clients to do that with, um, and so, picking and balance, like you said, balance, right? Balance. And go out and watch a movie. I took my granddaughter to How to Tame Your Dragons. Not the animated one, the one with people in it. And so yeah, there's violence, they're hitting each other around. And I come from a very violent background. So you want to balance, and you don't want to, if you were to take advice out of context here, you'd say anything that triggers you, stay away from. No, that'll never work, won't be functional, isn't helpful. We're talking about, again, the extremes that are going to lead to unhealthy attachments and views that I don't even question, why am I caught up in this TV series and what's the messaging here, right? And question that. Is this actually something I want to do? Is it contributing to my life or not? And we can have fun, right, in a movie and relax and have some joy and admire the acting and so forth. So having a balance is key, and meeting ourselves where we're at is going to be really important. It's like I always tell people, okay, this is not going to be logical, but it makes sense to me. Like with your diet, right? You want to have a balanced diet. There's healthy food and unhealthy food. So I try to equal it out. And that way I have a balanced diet. Laura doesn't buy my logic, but So, but you don't, when you get too rigid, you get bitter and brittle. And so you always want to keep moving in the healthier direction in a healthy, meaningful way that's inviting reward and engagement instead of sheer brute force. Yeah. All right. Rocket. Roxana. How you doing?
I was talking to Aaron today.
Ah,
So two thoughts came up. One is I enjoy documentaries like The Shark Whisperer or The Octopus Teacher.
is the shark whisperer the lady who takes the hooks out of the shark's mouth?
No, she's a different person. She
Oh,
was raised in Hawaii and she swam there like 20 different species of sharks around Hawaii. And so she swims with them, and ultimately she was swimming with tiger sharks and also with great white sharks. And it's really good. It's on Netflix.
okay.
But anyway, she's very successful, and she even got Hawaii to pass a law to not kill sharks just for their fins for soup. Um, so anyway, it's pretty cool.
Okay.
But the other thing I was thinking about is depending on where you get your news, a lot of it's clickbait, a lot of it's not true to begin with. And so it's more than ever, one has to be discerning about, well, is this AI? Is this true? Because they slant things and trick you into maybe believing something that's what really not true. You know what I mean? So
Oh yeah, no, that's pervasive. Yeah, that's one of the big
yeah,
challenges in our time. Yeah.
it's wild. That's it.
All right, thank you. Yeah. So let's take a look at the other factors here and see if we can put it all into a context. So familiarity, the fifth factor is familiarity or habit. We are creatures of habit. The thoughts and impulses we make a habit of are the ones that will arise in our mind most easily and spontaneously. Mentally criticizing others, for instance, can become so frequent and persistent that we stop noticing it. It becomes our default mode. Observe your thoughts and recognize the ones that are most habitual and problematic. Resolve to pay particular attention to these and to work on overcoming or at least reducing them. And for time, I'm just going to go right into 6. Inappropriate attention. The 6th factor is inappropriate attention. When we are angry at, unhappy about, or attached to an object, our mind continues thinking about it again and again, obsessively. It's like a negative form of meditation that causes our mind to become increasingly unpeaceful and deluded. Find an example of this in your experience and recognize its disadvantages. Resolve to be mindful as much as you can. And when you notice your mind getting obsessed about something in a negative way, switch your attention to something positive or at least neutral. I actually don't I don't tell people to shift to something positive. I say switch to something real, something true. Because we're in that thing, it's not true, right? We're ruminating, we're caught up. It's all in my mind. What's true, I'm alive, I have 2 feet, I'm sitting here in Carbondale, hanging out with my friends. You got a Kingfish shirt. Yeah. 1999, huh? Clark Stallman's blues guitar. And and challenging, coming back to reality. It's not there's an unhappy thought, I'm gonna have a happy thought. It's shifting back to reality and opening ourselves to a better perspective, in which case you're generally happier anyway. the proactive sense of noticing the good, like as a habit, will radically change this. And so that's a practice to daily notice the good. Actively notice people doing kind things, actively noticing that. And then that becomes a familiar pattern. And so we have familiarity, and then we have that rumination. How many times have you been like ruminating about the conversation you're going to have with this person? Right. You're going to have that talk. Oh man, you're spinning. Well, no, I'll approach it this way, or maybe I'll tell them that. But if they say that, and then maybe I think this, and then, they're going to be like this. You have this whole thing, right? And, that mind's just hooked into that. And so what's happening with all of this is we have these seeds, these imprints, right? And they are going to grow and multiply. We're going to have these different propensities and so forth. And it's going to build and build and build. And then we see and experience the world from a very unique perspective, right? Your perspective is absolutely unique. And we forget that what I'm experiencing is all subjective. I actually think that person's a jerk, or this person's funny, or this is a good thing and that's a terrible thing, or just all the I see this world, and I think I'm seeing something that is the way it is. But actually, because of the conditioning, the familiarity, the environments I was in, my genetics, my imprints, the stuff that's come in, they have been all contributing to how I'm experiencing you in this moment, how I experience anything. And based on some beliefs, I'm going to get really pissed off over some things and really excited about other things. And you're going to get really excited about the thing I don't like. And I'm not, and we don't realize that we're not even actively a part of this process. But you can be. You can be watering, nurturing, and growing the types of seeds that are conducive, constructive, healthy, based in reality. But it's going to be really hard, like the boulder uphill. It takes time, and it takes a conscious effort. And what we're up against in the world we're living in, as you've heard me say many times, is this is an effortless world. It's an effortless world. It actually becomes a struggle and painful to do things that used to be effortless to us, and they become an effort. Like typing. Go back and retype something and copy and paste, man. I don't have to do that. And then if you have to do it, oh my God, I have to retype a whole paragraph all by myself with my own brain without AI. That's just wrong. I was reflecting on just sweeping, like how cool it was, sweep a floor, got a broom, could pick up. If I didn't have a broom, like having to pick all that stuff by hand, like that's a lot of work when I got a broom. Well, now I got a vacuum. That sucks. And then, man, who wants a broom? I got a vacuum. Like, TVs used to have to change the channel. Anybody remember that? You had to watch commercials or get up off the couch. It was brutal. Have to make those choices. And today, like, really? And then if you have to do something, and those things before were not effortful. And so with all the effortless stuff we have, the thermostats, the remotes, the copy and paste, I can order food. I don't even have to do it. Delivered, man. And then, I have to go get it. Really? And so think about the world we're living in, and then think about the effort of introspection and mindfulness and healthy choices and monitoring. That's a high degree of being an active participant in who you become. And on a subtle level, I rarely need to do any of that because I just hang out with my friends, go to work, buy the things people tell me to buy that are cool, and the type of label on those things. And I even question, like, why would I spend $80,000 on a vehicle instead of 40? Like, that's a big difference, 40 grand, I'm telling you. What's the difference between this vehicle and that vehicle? Or this seat on an airplane and that seat, and there's a $500 difference, and the flight's 3 hours. Like, the programming, and once you get in that other seat, it's torture to go back and sit by the restaurant. Like, really? I gotta go sit with those people? Oh my God. And in the middle seat, there was a time people are like, there's a comedian, I had a whole spiel, but he made it famous. So he didn't steal it from me, he just did it. And he goes, like, you're on an airplane, like you're on an airplane, like, my God, you're in the air going 550 miles per hour. Thank you. And you're in this metal too, and you're flying, and you can have a soda. Like, you should be going like woohoo the whole way. Like, like, how does this happen? And we're like, man, I'm in the middle seat and I have a 3-hour flight. And in 3 hours, you're gonna go in, like, across how many states and land and be somewhere else in another time zone. Like, that's amazing, right? We can be sitting there, man, I got a 3-hour flight today. It's just, we're not consciously often able to bring a perspective to what's happening because of all the acculturation and these factors coming together that are shaping us and imprinting us. And the question is, are we a participant in that process or not? And if we can be, we can start monitoring these factors and cultivate these healthy seeds and potentials that'll give rise to a very different being. But when we're in our environments and people are talking about their first class seat or their travel, or whether this was a nice place to go to or this was a terrible place or whatever, that's all being integrated. And then, my perception of things are being shaped all the time. And with the, am I just noticing the things that are terrible in the world, or all the things that are good in the world? Where's the good? Or am I ignoring the bad and not doing anything to help it, right? Realizing, yeah, there's challenging things in this world. Or am I even noticing that what I'm calling terrible right now and so worked up about, I may not even remember next week. Especially when you're on the clickbait news stuff, right? Like, man, that was so 3 days ago. And we don't notice it. And we're hooked again, right? And understanding that it's anxiety. How many times have we been anxious in our life? I don't know, a million times, who knows? And then I get anxious and I think, wow, I'm really anxious and this thing's a big deal. Except I've done experiences a bunch of times, I'm okay. And so these factors are going on all the time. And with introspection and mindfulness, we can actually start being a gatekeeper and being proactively seeking the conditions that give rise to these healthier propensities. But that's an effort. And progressively, it becomes more of a habit. And then things that used to give rise to some sensation, whether something to attach to or something you don't like, can completely shift. Because we're shifting, because this is all subjective. But very few people are a participant in who they become, because this is going on all the time. So this is how this experience we're having becomes very reified instead of subjective. And as we change us, we change this experience. And you might even find you start liking people you didn't used to like. And stop doing some things that used to give you great joy because it's not that interesting anymore. Not that I'm encouraging you to do that, it just happens. I was just reflecting on the last time I rock climbed. I got up to the top, it was a great day, beautiful day, nice people, got to the top, and I realized, I think I'm done with this. It's good, it was healthy, fun, but I have other interests now. You know, I was getting all caught up in this whole spiritual thing. And, you know, wanting to meditate and stuff, and that just was more interesting, that's all. And took the ropes down, sold my stuff, started doing other things. There was no loss, you know, and I loved climbing. So we just start bringing to mind things that really speak to this way of being, and we can be a part of that. And then it becomes more habit and less effortful. And if you put yourself, that's why Sangha, community support is so important. If we're not around here, like on a Wednesday night, talking about these things, where else are you going to be talking about? Where's the input? Where's the information? You know, and yeah, I mean, you could always talk to the person in the grocery store. Tell them, do you know you're having a subjective experience right now? Yeah. And they say, yeah, this cherry pie is delicious. You go, actually, it's not delicious. That's just an experience you're having due to your karmic imprints and a very subjective experience based on this phenomenon that we label cherry pie. But, you know, it's actually empty of any inherent existence. It's a sensation you're having that you just label delicious. They might think you're a little odd. It's possible. So that you just say, yeah, it's really delicious. Can I have another piece? That's my answer. So, but understanding this experience, learning about it, applying it, talking about it, understanding it, questioning it, you know, that's how we become an active participant in this process. And that's why community environments, safe, supportive, nurturing environments, being around healthy discussions as much as we can is really going to be critical to be an active participant in our becoming. All right, let's do our dedication here. There we go. So, what a incredible opportunity that we have had to come together and support each other, and taking some time to reflect upon how we become and how we can become a participant in that becoming. Incredible amount of virtue, merit, wisdom. And so let us dedicate our time here together and all the merit we've ever accumulated in our lives for the benefit of all sentient beings. May the efforts we make here, along with all those doing good in the world, find its way into the world to help all beings find some peace, find some clarity, have access to teachings that give them a life that they find truly meaningful, healthy, and well. And may we also dedicate this merit for our own continued spiritual growth, that we may apply these teachings in our lives in ways that are practical and meaningful, that support the quality of genuine well-being that we seek, and a greater understanding of ourselves and our experience, so that we can be of greatest benefit to all. That, those who'd care to join me in the formal dedication. By this merit, may I soon attain the enlightened state of Guru Buddha, that I may be able to liberate all sentient beings from their sufferings. May the precious Bodhi mind, not yet born, arise and grow. May that born have no decline, but increase forevermore.
Om Tare Tu Tare Tu Re Soha. Om Tare Tu Tare Tu Re Soha. Om Tare Tu Tare Tu Re Soha. Om Tare Tu Tare Tu Re Soha.